Hello, my name is Jeremy Thurn. I'm a United States Coast Guard licensed captain. I'm also an engineer, a diver, and I run an outdoor show called Hazardous. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about fishing and sharing some old stories and tactics and different things like that to hopefully help you guys catch more fish and just enjoy the show.
And keep you safe. We'll give you some safety tips.
So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about things that can go wrong on a boat. Because if you've been on a boat, you know it's not hard for things to go wrong.
Always something.
Right. Boating's kind of interesting. You don't really need anything to do it. Like, you don't need a license. If you want to go buy a boat and go boating, go for it.
If you don't believe us, go down to the ramp on a Saturday and you'll see what we're talking about.
Exactly. I mean, things can go wrong boating before you even get to the water. You know, just trying to trailer your boat and back it in, right?
Exactly. Yeah, so what you want to make sure is before you even leave the house, make sure your batteries are charged and your boat works. Because how many times, several times that we've got down to the dock and the batteries are totally dead, all three of them in the boat.
Yeah, so, you know, even knowing, you know, your battery, you need to check your battery. Like, we'll check it, and one time we got down there and it was just a bad cell. Like, we charged it the night before, but it wasn't holding a charge. Battery was totally shot. So, kind of ended our day of fishing.
It did. And then another time it was dead, but we were able to jump it. Once you get it started, your motors will generally charge it unless you have that bad cell.
Yeah.
And if you have a bad cell, don't go offshore, way offshore until you get that fixed.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that have, gone wrong? Some of the most memorable?
Well, the batteries, obviously, your bearings on your trailer.
No, I meant like you personally, like what's something that happened to you that, you know, things went wrong?
Like when my boat sunk this time.
That would be a good example of something going wrong.
So we were out fishing out at the BR, about 30 miles out. Did good. The weather was perfect, and a front came through, kicked out the seas, which is still no problem. We're in a 19-foot Mako, so we decided that we'll just come on back. On the way back in, we were pounding the waves pretty good, and we hit something and it shorted out our ignition system, shut the motor down. And so with the waves as big as they were, we knew that we had to do something quick. So we got the anchor out, got it set out, but we took a couple of waves over the side before we got the anchor out. So even though the anchor was holding, we still had a lot of water in the boat. And when the bow would go up and go back down, that water would just rush in through the back, and we couldn't get rid of the water, and the bilge pump couldn't keep up with the amount of water we had in there. So fortunately, I was able to call one of the local captains of one of the party boats, right. George Strait, and he was able to come out there and help us.
Well, you tried calling the Coast Guard first, right?
We did. We called the Coast Guard, but unfortunately, this front that moved through and caused problems for a lot of boats, and Coast Guard said, we don't have anybody available. All our boats have been deployed. So there was a lot of people having issues that day. And so it's something to kind of think when you're out there and you hear somebody in trouble, to make sure you go over there and try to assist them. At least give them on your boat, even if you can't save the boat, you know.
Right. So Captain George came and saved you?
Yeah, George Strait came, Miss Mayport back in the day, and he got up and he said, man, I don't know if I can save your boat, he says, because there's a lot of water. But he says, what I want you to do, and there was 5 of us on the boat, he says, I want you to jump out one at a time and swim to my boat, and we'll pull you up on the party boat. Well, it was like an Olympic start. The 4 guys hit that water, and they were at the boat in no time waiting for see who was going to get pulled up first.
Yeah.
I stayed with the boat. We hooked the rope around it using his big party boat to try to pull the boat. There's so much water in it, it ripped the cleat out of the bow of the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, just totally pulled it out. And so he said, wrap it around the structure, the aluminum or steel part of the top, stainless steel, and we'll try it. And he said, if it doesn't, we won't be able to save your boat. And fortunately, it did. And the fact that it was a self-bailing boat, the water went out pretty quick once they started pulling it.
Yeah.
So we're good. But before that happened, we lost tackle boxes. We lost life jackets that we didn't have on, which is the first thing we should have done was put on. And most of the other guys did, but I was trying to get everything together. The flares, I got up. I had to stand up on the console of the boat and hold the flare up just so he could see me because it was so rough.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, so many things can go wrong, and you know, it definitely changes you, right? I mean,
Oh, it does.
you,
Yeah, it makes you think before you go out because that's not a place to play, especially that time of the year, which was real early spring or late winter, and the water is real cold. And you get in that water, hypothermia is your biggest enemy out there. Then, even if you got a life jacket on, you know your time in the water is very limited.
right. And you know, it's funny, like so. Stuff can happen, and you know everyone is required to carry life jackets, and we do. But sometimes things happen, and you can't get to them.
Right.
That's one of the things. Like, so I was intentional about getting these Mustang float jackets. So it's like a regular jacket. It's great for fishing because it's warm and it's waterproof. And the cool thing is it's got built-in flotation.
Right.
So it literally counts as a life jacket. Like if Coast Guard or whoever were to stop and check you, they'd see that jacket and it'd be counting as a life jacket. So I'm naturally wearing a life jacket, not a bulky, awkward, standard life jacket around my neck where I couldn't do anything. But I've got this warm floating jacket on. If I were to just get knocked over in the water, I'm floating.
Yeah, and sometimes even if you got your life jackets up in the tea bag, you hit a rogue wave or something, you may not have a chance to get it. It may flip your boat over. Your life jackets will be stuck upside down in the boat. And you can't get to them.
Right.
So I'm not a big fan of the tea bags. I'd rather have the little toss bag with them, and then if you need that, you can take it and throw it out and put them on the water if you had to. But if it was in a hurry or something.
Where would you keep that bag though?
I would keep it, and we talked about this with our life raft too. And, we're not going to put it down in any of the holes. When we're running out, we'll probably keep it in front of the console. So if something happens, it's right there. We throw it out and we're good to go.
Right.
Same thing with your life jacket bag too. You can keep it out there, and if you need it, and like I said, the boat flips, you can still get your life jackets off or something before you. And the thing is, once that if you hit the water and it's rough, it's hard to get to your people. And or to the boat. So if you can stay with the boat and it's floating, that's what you need to do. Just hang on to the boat. But if you guys get separated, it's harder to find recover you guys.
So things that can go wrong, like little things can happen that can cause big problems, like a bilge pump, or not bilge pump, a live well pump. Breaking free,
right? Or the hose, yes, hose splits.
Can quickly start flooding your boat.
Right. That's why if you have a under the deck pump, always have a shutoff valve in case, because those live well pumps will split sometimes, and water will start flowing on. So if you got a shutoff pump, then you're good. You keep the water from coming in. Right.
Have that shut off. Have the float switch on your bilge. But even that, you need to pay attention, because if you notice, like, man, my bilge pump's coming on a lot.
Yeah, running a lot.
That's your clue. Look inside the bilge.
Exactly, and it doesn't hurt to have two bilge pumps. We try to have two of everything: two GPSs, two radios, because you never know if one of them goes out. At least you have a backup.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'd say it's definite to have two bilge pumps. Just because. Yeah, it's pretty critical. Like if a live well pump goes out, that can ruin your day of fishing, but it's not gonna kill you. But if a bilge pump goes out, then that could be a big problem.
And another thing we do is not only do we have two bilge pumps under the deck, we have a portable one that we can hook up, and it's a big one too.
It's like 3,800.
Yeah, and that one, and not only that can that help you, but if somebody else's boat's sinking. You can go up there and give them that bilge pump. It would help them too. So
that's a portable. Basically, it's a big 3,800 bilge pump with a hose, and we gave it really long wires, so it can go to our battery bank all the way. We can drop it in the bilge, turn it on, plug it into the batteries, and it'll kick on. Yeah,
and we got plenty of hose on there, probably about 15 or 20 foot of hose. So about anywhere in the boat you can use it and empty the bilge out on it.
But it is important to pay attention. If your boat feels sluggish,
And
heavy.
you can tell too, because if anybody who's boated a lot, you know your boat. And when you get there and you feel that boat, I mean, it's rolling around like a tank or something, you know, or a barge.
Right.
You've got some issues in there, and I've done that before. I've opened up the bilge, and the water's all the way up to the top.
That happened in the Hot Pursuit one time.
It did.
What was what caused that?
Well, the automatic bilge switch went out, or the wire, I think, corroded off. So what we did was we started heading back, and we had one guy back there bailing because we didn't have a spare pump in that one. And we bailed it, and once we got it down, it was okay. But when you get, that's a lot of water in a boat, and when you get that much water in a boat and you hit a wave sideways, that'll actually affect the boat and make it flip even more.
What caused the water to get in? Was just
It could have been coming in, yeah, it was a rough day, so it could have been coming in the scupper valves. You know, most boats will have a little bit, that's why we have bilge pumps in there, you know, through either water coming over the side, you know, going in through your scupper valves or something like that.
Yeah.
Seems like you always get a little bit of water in the bilge.
Now, when I got my captain's license, I know one of the things they talked about, you know, they teach you kind of how to, you know, what to look for, boat problems, you know, what problems to expect, what can arise. And the thing to keep in mind is water generally doesn't come in like a random spot in your fiberglass. Like you don't just get a hole. It's not like cartoons where someone's remodeling your boat and drilling a hole.
Right.
I mean, if you hit something, yeah, I mean, you know, you hit something really hard, it may crack your hole. But more than likely, if water's coming in from into your boat, it's somewhere where you've already drilled a hole. So like a water pickup, a live well pickup, a bilge pickup, your plug.
Or even in the back, if it's rough, it can come over your transom if you got a low transom.
Yeah, but like even just on a regular day, like if it's not rough and water's coming through, you know, a scupper or a hose, usually somewhere where you already have a hole drilled, you know, that hose, that through hole, whatever it may be.
Maybe transducer or anything.
Could have broke, yeah, transducer. Like these are all the places you want to look. Like if you feel you're taking on water, those are the areas to check, and those are the areas you'd want to like try to plug up.
Exactly, and if you're not sure, and when you do get clean that and get back into the port, put your boat on a trailer, plug it up, run water through the bilge,
Right.
and you'll see where that water is leaking at, and that'll tell you where your leak's at.
So yeah, if you think there's, you know, if you're getting a lot of water in, you know, if it was a calm day and dry and you get back and you're like, man, why is there water? There's a little bit of water in my bilge.
Right.
Then that would be a good time to plug it up, fill it with water yourself on dry land, and check it, see what you see.
Right, and like you said earlier, that you know when your pump's constantly coming on, you got some water coming, some issues somewhere, so you just want to watch it. It's not uncommon for it to do it maybe 2 or 3 times a trip. But when it's coming on like every 10 minutes or so, then you definitely want to stop what you're doing and see what the problem is, or head back in and especially if you're way out to the ledge or something.
Yeah, and things going wrong, you know, looking more at like the root cause, like a bilge pump going out, like you were saying, the wire's corroded.
Right.
You know, it's not like land, you know, cars. You're in a very harsh environment just being on the water. It's rough. Boats are constantly pounding, and it's salty, which is very corrosive. So you have to take more care than like you would just on your car. Not
Right.
just like, oh, I did the oil, changed the oil, I'm good. I mean, you got to check your wires. You got to check your connections.
And you should do that at least at the beginning of the season. We do it a couple of times, but go through the wiring, go through where they hook up to the battery. Sometimes you just can't tell, but when you get up to the battery and you undo the thing, it'll be your battery hookups will be completely corroded.
Yeah.
And when you go to pull them off, it just comes apart. And then remember, when you lose that battery and that electric in there, you lose your bilge, and you also lose your radio signals and everything. So you kind of everything depends on batteries on the boat.
Right. Yeah. Power is definitely very important. It's nice we have a Spot X. We have an EPIRB, you know, which have their own power source.
Yeah.
We've even carried a handheld GPS, so it's got its own battery source. So again, having redundancy, you know, we have 3 batteries in our boat, but even aside from that, we have things that aren't even connected to those 3 batteries.
Right. Yeah. Just for emergency sakes. But yeah. So that's the big thing is the water getting in the boat. Fire is another thing. Make sure you got. We talked about this one other time. Your fire extinguishers. And because, man, a fire on a boat is probably the most terrifying thing you can be.
Which is ironic because you think on a boat surrounded by water, you think a fire, oh yeah, just put some water on it.
Yeah.
It's easy.
We can show you some pictures of boats that's burnt down to the water level.
Yeah.
And then eventually they'll sink. That fiberglass, when it catches on fire, it's going to burn.
Right.
So you just got to be real careful out there.
One thing to keep in mind, everyone, some people may not realize, is with lithium batteries, we're seeing all these trolling motors on boats, even on big offshore boats. You got spot lock, Rodans, Minn Kota, all these things. And lithium batteries are kind of the trend right now. They're lightweight and powerful, got a long life. But here's something to keep in mind with lithium batteries is they burn very hot. In fact, a lithium battery catches on fire and you throw that into the water, it's going to keep burning in the water. So
yeah, and that's not good.
Right. So imagine what this is going to do to your boat. It's going to burn right through the fiberglass into the water. Now you got a hole in your boat.
Right.
And your boat's on fire probably.
And a couple things too. When you're out there and you start getting in trouble, the first thing you should do is get on the radio and let somebody know. Say, I've got water coming in on my boat. I've got a fire on my boat, and give them your location because once they have a starting point. If they can get to you a lot quicker, but if they have to look for you out in the ocean, they have no idea where to start. It cuts down your odds of survival a lot.
Right. Even with modern technology, it's very hard to find someone on the ocean.
We found that out a few years back. A couple of firemen that went out, and they never did find the boat or them.
Right.
So you just don't ever know. But if you take the initiative. One, to make sure that everything's straight when you go out there, but you're always going to have issues not always, but there'll be times everybody's going to have an issue at one time or another.
Right.
And if you're prepared to deal with it, and make sure you let people know where you're at. When you go out, if you're going way offshore, let somebody know where you're going. Give them a plan of, I'm going to the TW or I'm going to the BR, and then we may work north or we may work south. Just give them something. Let them know you're high-speed trolling. So that'll give them an idea how much ground you're covering also.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of things can go wrong on a boat. Little things can go into a big thing,
We've had center console knocked loose from rough water. Literally the console of the boat. 2 people had to hold it while I was driving it. Yeah, and that, remember those sport craft?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know how, and we were going into a strong southeast from the north. And so we were taking a pounding, but who ever expects your console to break loose,
Right, yeah.
So what are some of the other things that we would have to deal with out there?
Well, I know one time we were getting ready to go to a spot and I smelled some fuel and there was gas in our bilge because the tank, our fuel tank had basically corroded on the top. So a lot of the aluminum tanks, especially on older boats, if they're in contact with some kind of wires, like the sending
just even
wires,
running across the top will cause that electrolysis.
Right. Yeah. Like basically, it'll cause it to corrode, lack of a better word, and get holes in the top. And then when you kind of start taking off and you got a full tank, all that fuel comes out and it starts going in your bilge, and that's another thing you don't want.
Right.
You don't want fuel in your bilge.
Even our fill up. Where that hose comes in to fill the tanks up on the Blazer Bay, we kept getting fuel in our bilge and we thought we had a bad tank. Come to find out, it was the bottom of the hose. It looked good at top, but when you felt the bottom, it was just mush.
Yeah, started feeling it. And
so we never could figure out where the fuel gas was coming, and you don't want a lot of fumes on your boat. Talking about something that's easy to ignite, a little spark, and it could be bad news.
Right. It's kind of funny. We were at the Miami Boat Show and they showed off a new that hydrogen. It was hydrogen powered outboard, the center console, and it's funny. Some people were like, "Man, could you imagine riding on that much explosives?" I'm like, "What do you think you do now?" You're riding on hundreds of gallons of fuel, which is pretty explosive. So
Yeah. If and there again, when you're out there, sometimes there's no other boats around you. You might be out there all by yourself. And,
right.
And another thing is, if you're taking on water, make sure you get some kind of distress signal up. When you know you're in peril
Yeah.
and you can't do anything with it, get a distress signal going then.
Boating's not like cars, and you can't just pull off to the side and wait for someone.
No, you can't.
You're away from everyone. Nowhere to pull off. So
There you go.
speaking of fuel in the bilge, I heard this the story this one time. I think these people were down in the Keys, and they went to fill up their boat at a marina on the water. So they got the gas tank or the nozzle, and they put it in. They started pumping gas. Well, they didn't put it in their fuel tank.
Put it in the rod holder.
They put it in a rod holder. Started pumping gas in the rod holder, and they didn't notice.
Yeah, I think they had somebody that didn't know what they were doing on the boat, and they thought they were putting it in the fuel tank.
Yeah, they weren't paying attention, didn't know something, but all of a sudden the bilge kicks on. It's kicking fuel out.
Yeah, right in the middle of a giant, by the
like
motel there.
at the gas station. All these boats and marinas and.
Yeah, which made the line shorter.
Yeah.
People waiting in line after that.
The fire department ended up coming, and they pumped something in the bilge, like a foam, which I guess keeps fumes from.
Oh, okay.
Basically, it filled it up. So it.
Because the fumes is what sets it up.
Yeah.
You can pour wet gas on a match, and it'll put the match out. But the fumes, that'll cause an explosion.
Right. So I don't know what that foam did to his boat, but I'm sure it was a pretty costly mistake.
Another thing, people forget to put their plug into the boat. Yeah, and I've seen several people like that, and they're like, "We keep getting water in our boat." I said, "You put the plug in it?" "Oh no, I didn't." Which that's kind of an easy fix if you can find it quick enough.
Right.
Somebody just gets in the water and puts the plug in there. Hope you don't drop it when you're down there. And I keep several extra plugs in my boat just in case I do lose one or I have to get one.
Yeah. And the dangerous thing about the plug in the boat is when you're running, like water won't get in your boat. So you can run all the way offshore and everything will seem fine. And you stop and start fishing, and that's when the water gets in.
Right.
And if you catch it and there's not too much in, you can get back up running and it'll drain out. But if you don't catch it, you're offshore and sinking.
Right. And them boats go down fast sometimes when you get them. If you don't have a good boat like my old Mako, you would have been sunk on that day.
Some boats are filled with foam to be, unsinkable. And, they are, it's not like a Titanic unsinkable claim. They are...
Right. They'll get low in the water. They may not go to the bottom, but they'll get low in the water.
I believe Boston Whaler, I think...
in a lot of boats, when they flip over, they'll get an air pocket up in the bow.
Yeah.
And as long as that air pocket's in there, it'll hold the boat up. But as soon as that boat goes straight and that air goes out, you'll see them drop straight down.
Right.
So what else? We found that floating boat out there that the Coast Guard shot up that time, remember? And could you imagine hitting that before daylight?
Yeah, there's objects,
You got to really...
logs.
Other boats, heavy fog.
Yeah.
That's another thing you got to watch out for. We were coming back last year and had the radar and everything, and I was running too fast, really, for as thick as the fog was. But on my radar, I got a blip. It was dead in front of me, and I shut it down right immediately. And probably within about, I'd say, 100 feet, there was a boat in front of me. And we were dead on the same trail for going in, so I would have run into the back of them had I not had radar on.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't have been going that fast in the first place.
I had it one time kind of similar where I had the radar on, we were cruising out, and I didn't really, there wasn't anything big on the radar, nothing showed up, at first, but I'm driving, it was a flat day, but then all of a sudden you kind of hit that regular boat wake where it's not real big, and it's this is out of nowhere, there's a boat wake, there's got to be a boat nearby.
Right, something made it.
Yeah, so I was playing with the radar, and finally I got it, mess with the settings and kind of see, there's a boat, so I was able to avoid it, but definitely have to pay attention to where you're driving.
Another thing we should talk about too that can ruin your day is medical emergencies, hooks in your hand, cuts, things like that. And we know we get plenty of hooks in them. I've had them in my hand several times over the last years, and I've been cut with a knife and all. especially if you're on medication that blood thinners and all, you make sure you got a tourniquet on the boat or something that you can stop the bleeding on, because that far out, you can bleed out in a hurry.
Yeah, I'd heard this story. This guy, like locally, I think he was in St. Augustine, and he was driving up north in a 39 CV for a marlin tournament. He had a big tower, so he couldn't really trailer his boat. But they were driving, and I don't think it was that rough of a day, but some rogue wave or a wave from somewhere came and like hit hard, and it sent the guy flying, I think, through his front windshield console or something. Basically ended up like busting his head open, and thankfully they had a lot of super glue, and the guy with them was smart enough to whip it out and start patching him up.
Right.
But I mean, they had to go into port. He was all banged up. Could have killed him. His tower, I think, was pretty messed up. His console from flying through it. So
yeah, so make sure you got a good first aid kit, because not only that, just hooks flying from when the wahoo came up.
yeah,
That big old hook gathers in your leg, and especially if it's still in the fish and he's pulling it.
right, yeah,
He's going to rip a hole in your leg, and the fish will bite you. Kingfish and wahoo, real sharp teeth.
yeah.
So and sailfish, they can impale you.
Even a dead fish, like I know a story of I've heard of actually a couple guys, I think, where they're holding like a fish. You hold it by the tail and its head's pointing down. A dead fish naturally might have its mouth open and like flip flops on, and someone drops a fish, and those teeth are still razor sharp when they're dead.
They are.
And drops it right on their foot, or it slides and hits their foot and cut their foot.
Right. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that happen. Make sure you got a good medical kit on there.
Yeah.
Especially, like I said, especially a tourniquet, just because if you have to use it. Most boats have ropes, and you can make one, probably a makeshift.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have that kit on there with you.
Right.
Let's see what else. We got the bilge pump, rough waves, medical. What else we got? Some problems that can happen.
Oh man, there's so many.
Heat stroke. You get out in the middle of summer and that heat's working on you. Cool that body down. If you get them in the water and cool them down.
Seasickness. People get seasick and they start throwing up. They get dehydrated.
Right. Some of them get violently seasick, even on flat days.
Yeah, even on flat days.
So just little things like that, and it may never. We hope it will never happen to you, but if it does, then you're prepared for it.
Yeah, hopefully there's a lot more we can talk about. I'm sure we'll talk more about it.
Yeah, and one of the things we do too is we put our name on everything in the boat that'll float out. Our life jackets, our coolers, buckets, everything. You put your name on it, and in that way, if something does happen, at least they'll have a trail of knowing which way you went. And then they can base their search patterns on that. If they have nothing, a lot of times if they don't have anything to work with, they'll shut the search down. And the one with the firemen, I think they extended another week because they found, or at least several days, because they found some floating debris that belonged to that boat. So.
Gotcha, yeah. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. If you're listening via podcast, we appreciate it. You can find us on YouTube as well if you want to see some of our videos, Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that. Anyone watching, you can also find our podcasts, and if it's easier for you to listen way to work or something like that, feel free. Guys, got any questions? By all means, send us your questions and any stories you might have. And
right, or anything that helps us out, because everybody's got something to add to the story.
Right, yeah. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Real Hazardous.